Greetings from AVP Research Foundation. We bring to you AyuLEARN series on COVID-19. So let us see where we stand. We have more than 2 million cases, active cases worldwide, and the death rate is more than 1 lakh. And concerning India, it is more than 400 deaths and more than 12,000 active cases. So this 2019 coronavirus, officially named as COVID-19 by the WHO, has brought about a whole lot of insecurities, concerns, and worries. And definitely it is the scare of the world right now. So we have come together to discuss and address few of the doubts and concerns of the general public at a large. And we have gathered here for the AyuLEARN series of COVID-19. So the first question that comes to the mind is, how did this pandemic outbreak happen? Where did it all come from? So to have the answer to this, we have Dr. Somit Kumar joining us from Latvia. So sir, how did this pandemic all happen? How did it all start? So can we have a clarity on this?
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. So as we all know that COVID-19 has taken a shape of a pandemic. And the whole concept of pandemic in Ayurveda has been aptly mentioned in Charaka Vimanasthana as Janpadodhamsam, when in spite of differences in our physiological makeup, food habit, wholesomeness, adaptiveness, physical strength, immunity, and metabolomics, we get a similar kind of disease. So what we see in this, that there is a virus which affects each one of us and creates a kind of a syndrome where the fever is the primary symptom in most of the cases, as we have seen that 92% of the cases have fever. And if you look at the textual reference, Sushruta has aptly mentioned that in such kind of pandemic, Jwara is one of the disease which is included by a vitiation of air, and because of various factors like aerosols, which comes through expired air, eating with others in the same plate, or sharing close proximity, wearing clothes which are kind of infected with our fellow family members. So such kind of close proximity can lead to such kind of a disease. There is also one more other concept which we'll have to understand is why this pandemic happened only in a particular place and season. So a very interesting article was published in American Journal of Chinese Medicine in March, which stated that this time the manifestation of winter disease, winter as a season was not very apt. So they found out that over years, their cold season or winter season used to always be sub-zero. But this time it was found out that the temperature between 1st to 16th November on average was around 18 degrees to 27 degrees. And which is not typical of a winter which we talk about as a Shita Ruksha, which could be cold and dry. And a very important concept in Ayurveda is that we succumb to different kind of disease based on Kal Artha Karmanam Yogo Hina Mityati Madraka. If the Kala or climate is not manifested naturally, or in its characteristic nature of the climate is not expressed, that has an effect on your immunity, your metabolism. And we know that Shishir Ritu and is a Chaya Avastha of Kapha. That means Kapha should solidify. But because of excessive heat, the temperature during this winter, the Vilayana Rupa Kapha Vriddhi happened, and that would have created a ideal imbalance of dosha imbalance. What we see initially, it was kapha imbalance, and then slowly this environment gave a very apt condition for Agni Mandyam and then Vyadhi Chumatvam getting lower. So I think this put the perspective as to why this disease would have happened in this time span in China.
Sir, thank you so much. That was Dr. Sumit, Director of AVP Research Foundation. So then the next question comes, what makes this coronavirus so important? What gives its importance, and why is it so more virulent than the other viruses that we have known? So for this, we have Mr. Sujit Ernayatha, the Assistant Director to AVP Research Foundation, also a microbiologist. So what gives this coronavirus the importance that it has right now? Why is it so virulent?
When we talk about coronavirus, first we have to see why viral infection as such is a little bit difficult to handle. Viruses are the simplest living organism. As in physics we say a simple pulley is a simple machine. This is the simplest living organism wherein there is a genetic code in it, either DNA or RNA, with a protein code as a covering on it. So in case of coronavirus, it's an RNA with a single stranded and it has a protein code on it. So this coronavirus and any RNA virus for that reason had been always a troublesome issue for the healthcare sector. In fact, these viruses have the capacity to stay innate as a non-living thing when outside the host system, and it regains all the ability to behave like a living organism when it is in a host system. For example, host a human or an animal. So what happens is when this virus infects, it actually hijacks the cellular metabolism of the host and utilizes whatever enzymes and other things which is actually required for their growth and grows based on that. So in this, what happens is our metabolic system is hijacked by an external entity. So what happens is controlling this means we have to control also our metabolic activity. So this is a challenge which, unlike a bacterial infection or something wherein we'll have to only target the bacteria, in viral infection this is totally a different scenario. Apart from this, other aspect is use of vaccines, wherein vaccines actually target a specific group of proteins. So this viruses, especially the corona group of viruses, even HIV has that property to rearrange its own genetic code and continue producing its virulent proteins, or what we call as the toxins. So a one-shot vaccines is also not a reality so far. Even in SARS, we don't have a 100% good vaccine so far. So while talking about coronavirus, the name comes from very simple. It's a virus which has a crown-like appearance and so called as coronavirus. And it's not a new thing for the humankind. The SARS epidemic that happened was also a coronavirus. And again, the MERS, which was again a mutated variety, that was also an coronavirus. The SARS virus, it came from the bats and was transmitted to the humans through other animals. In case of COVID-19, it is believed so far, what our research information which is available for us, it is believed that it is formed in bats and acquired to an organism called as pangolin, which in our common language we call it as inambichi. So this was acquired and then it was transmitted to the human being. So again, normally the animal viruses stay away from humans because of the metabolic differences. So it is this mutation which makes them acquire this ability to also infect a human being. So this is a start. This is where the infection starts. And when you look into COVID-19, what makes it more troublesome is because of its infectious rate. Compared with SARS and MERS, the infectious rate or the transmission rate is quite very high. And so far, WHO has declared droplet infection as the main mode of transmission. Airborne transmission, there are no evidences. WHO has not called it as an airborne infection, but if you look at the CDC of the USA is also considering it as an airborne infection because certain circumstances wherein aerosols can be created, it can also stay in air for some time. So that is the reason why it is also little bit considered as an airborne disease also. But so far it's considered as a droplet infection. So if we compare with, in case of SARS and MERS, close contact was actually required. Here, even a 1 meter distance, that means any places where we get together and everything becomes a probable scope of spreading. This is what makes this particular COVID-19 virus quite a very difficult thing to manage. And addition to this, even if you look, the mortality rate is low compared with other viruses. It's somewhere around 3.4 to 3.5 globally. But the problem is the number of people it gets affected is quite huge. So the small mortality rate itself means the people affected or people whom we have the dead cases are also very high. So another problem is when we have this high number of people coming together, the probable medical care which we can give is quite very limited. So this is what makes this virus quite very virulent and troublesome to handle.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. But then the next question comes as in we know the cardinal features of COVID-19 is always dry cough, breathlessness, and fever. But then we also see there is a shift in the signs and symptoms because of late anosmia has been added, and recently the bruises was also added. So I feel there is a shift in the signs and symptoms that is happening. So can we have Dr. Arun, the research associate of AVP Research Foundation, to answer this? What do you feel about the signs and symptoms, or apart from these cardinal features, what and all should be the symptoms that should be considered, which could be probably COVID-19, or what is the cause, the slowly changing tendency of signs and symptoms that is in the COVID-19? Can we have some insight to this question, Dr. Arun?
Yeah, thank you, Chaitanya. As you said, the most common symptoms of COVID-19 are fever, dyspepsia, tiredness, and dry cough. And in some patients, it is seen that they suffer with body aches, nasal congestion, and running nose, as well as sore throat and diarrhea. Actually, these symptoms starts very mild, and it's a very gradual process of increase in the symptoms. And it can range from mild to very severe illness and even death. And these symptoms appear like 2 to 14 days, such a long span of period after the exposure with the virus. And most of the symptoms in a very healthy individual who is having a very high immune system, the symptoms may develop very, very slow. And in some people who get infected, but they don't develop any kind of symptoms. They don't feel unwell also. So they just act as a carrier of this virus, and they may not get affected with the disease also. And most people, that is around 80% of the people who get affected with this COVID-19 coronavirus, and recover from the disease without any medical support or special treatment. As in every viral fever, the first thing what we follow is taking rest, as well as giving time for body to recover itself. And around 1 out of 6 people who gets COVID-19 becomes seriously ill and develops difficulty in breathing. And this is a stage where we have to consider an immediate medical care. And if the patient develop any of emergency warning signs, especially the high-grade fever, difficulty in breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest region, and kind of delirium state or confusion state, and bluish lips or face. And these are symptoms which is considered as the emergency warning signs of COVID-19, which need a very immediate medical attention.
this. Thank you, Dr. Arun. So then, next concern is that is this pandemic going to be a repetitive nature, or what is the nature of this pandemic? Will it be repeating the next season? Because you were talking about the climatic changes as well. So, Dr. Somit, can I have this answer to this question? Will this pandemic repeat in its nature, or next year, or after 1,000 years, or how is it going to be? Please go ahead with that.
Yeah, so as we all know that virus is there and it will remain. Now, whether it remains in the same version as what we currently see in terms of the same genetic code, or it modifies in due course of time because of host of environmental and other factors. But what we have to understand from Ayurvedic perspective, as I told you, that a disease is a state of imbalance of dosha, or certain imbalance in the physiology, which in this case has been brought about by some external factors. Like initially, the first case is because of eating certain kind of food, which was in Ayurveda we say tyajya, or unwholesome food, with a improper expression of the climate as per the ritu. Now, what we have to really take care of, can we keep our dosha balance even though the climate does not manifest in its characteristics, or there's uncharacteristic state of expression of climatic conditions, or which definitely affects our metabolism and thereby imbalancing our doshas. What we have to look at is, can we develop the right kind of regime in order to undo the effect of the imbalance of dosha, which the whole disease per se brings about? And as we can realize from the whole symptomatology, that it initially shows few symptoms of, as we have talked about, anosmia. Anosmia is seen in kapha pinnasam, and then we see the slowly the fever symptoms comes, and then myalgia. So we see there is a incremental involvement first with kapha symptoms, and then vata symptoms add on to it. And in the moderate, least severe condition, we say a lot of vata kapha symptoms, and then it pans out to be as a sannipatika jwara. Now, if you're looking at this whole imbalance pattern as per Ayurvedic thought process, what would help us to stop a repetition of such kind of a large-scale pandemic? It may still reoccur, but to stop such a large-scale pandemic, we need to address to the diet, lifestyle, and some kind of immunomodulatory herbs where our innate immunity is beefed up to address these changes due to the virus.
Thank you, sir. So then, so Dr. Arun, coming back to you, which part of the community, like age-wise or the disease-wise, are more vulnerable to this pandemic?
People of all ages can be infected by new coronavirus, COVID-19, and compared to the younger generation, older people and people with pre-existing medical conditions such as bronchial asthma, diabetes, and heart diseases appear to be more vulnerable to become very severely ill with this virus. And if you look at the recent researches and surveys which is conducted in different parts of the globe, this is finding from New York City Health as of April 14. Here you can see age and in
zoomed, because can you just share it on the presentation mode?
Is it visible now?
Yeah.
If you look at the relation of age and number of deaths, which is due to the coronavirus, see here the percentage of death in a very young, up to the 0 to 17 years of age, it is very low as compared to the older age. Like you can see in the 75 plus year old, it's 47.7 percentage. And this here, the other systemic problems like diabetes or bronchial asthma or hypertension, which is very common in an age group above 75 or even above 65, that makes the number of deaths in a very high level in this older age. And I think the smaller age group is not having such kind of systemic problems, so that's why they are having a better survival rate compared to the older.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Arun. Now, I think the most important question that we have is what is the Ayurvedic perspective of understanding of COVID-19? And along with this, I would also like to add, maybe then after 100 years, if this pandemic reoccurs, how are we going to document it into the Ayurvedic knowledge system? Or how is it that we have to look from the Ayurvedic perspective of COVID-19? Over to Dr. Somit Kumar.
See, let's understand as to how this disease develop. So first, I would like to make you understand as to how the molecular and mechanism of this disease, starting from an invasion of a virus, happens in the body. So why I'm trying to tell this is because we have to understand as to how we have to understand the whole chronology of this pathogenesis from a perspective of Ayurvedic concept of the dosha, srotas, and importance on how it affects your marmas and ojas, because these are the major factors, and including Agni, of course. So these are very important, because unless and until we don't understand any disease, for that matter, I'm very sure the same coronavirus, because when it was the same coronavirus SARS in 2003, it was not as virulent as what it is in 2019. So a further new version, will it have the same signs and symptoms? We don't know. So, but the best part of Ayurvedic thought process or pathogenesis is that we have the theory of Tridosha, where based on the clinical phenotypes, what we see, that means what are the clinical symptoms patients show us, we can understand that in terms of Tridosha and its effect on our Agni and other Srotas. So this is the basic algorithm Ayurveda has. So we don't have to worry about whether we are able to find out a virus, antigens, and a antidote for it. What we have to work is, can we enable our body to fight the disease or virus as its own? So we have to understand that there are two types of immunity: innate immunity, which Sujit was talking about, and a humoral immunity or acquired immunity, which will come through vaccines. So there is no vaccine for next 1 year for so. So what we have to do? We have to do something with our innate immunity, that is, which is mediated by your own antibodies or certain protective mechanism which happens. So if you look at the moment virus enters your upper respiratory tract, so we have, as we all know now through all publications, that there is ACE2 receptors in upper respiratory tract, as well as the type 2 pneumocytes of the alveolar cell in your lungs. Now, what it does, the virus enters through these receptors or ACE2 receptors and start replicating, as Sujit has explained, that it uses the metabolic or the replicative mechanism of the cell, individual cell, to develop its own protein, which are not, which are very foreign to our body type or body cell, natural cells. And that's how an inflammatory response takes place. The moment first and inflammation starts in the upper respiratory tract, that's where we start getting a dry cough symptom. Then when more and more viral replication happens, slowly your body's innate immune response starts getting activated, which is basically guided by macrophages and neutrophils. Now, what this macrophages and neutrophils does to our body is to start a fight mechanism, and then as a response to this fight, the first symptom happens is jwara, the fever. We know that how central axis, because based on this inflammatory response, body start showing the jwara. So as long as it is in upper respiratory tract, where it is in a milder form, this is where Ayurveda has a lot of active part to play in order to prevent from getting this inflammation into the lungs, into the alveolar cells. Now, this is the first part of the disease, where it is mild, moderate with fever symptoms. But what happens on an average of 9 days, we see that 50% of such mild symptom converts into acute respiratory distress syndrome. Now, what is ARDS? Now, what happens is, you need to understand why 50% are changing into it. So we have seen that most of these 50% who needs a intensive care, they have major comorbidities. As per the new Italian research, which has been recently published on 13th of April, it shows that only 27% of the people who were in ICU had no comorbidities. Rest of all of them, 73% people had comorbidities, and the first comorbidity which was shown was cardiovascular disease and hypertension. The second, which was diabetes, and then cancer and other asthma and other situation. Now, why it has happened? Because, it is now highly debated that many of the antihypertensive drug activates these ACE receptors, and you create more ACE receptors in the body. So what happens? There are more receptors for the virus to enter into the system and create such kind of inflammation very fast. So now the issue is, how do we block these virus from getting into ACE receptors and modulate this acute inflammation? That is, see, in Ayurveda, we talk about whenever a inflammation takes place, we say there is a vidaha. There is a pitta kapha vidaha or kapha pitta vidaha, and then it creates an ama situation. And ama is an ideal situation where host of bacteria and virus can grow. And this is what is happening when it gets into lung, when it becomes ARDS symptoms. You have a strong vidaha in the lungs, where pupusa, and you'll be it is very interesting to understand that what is the dhatu associated with alveolar cells. Pupusha is rakta fena prasadajaha. So there is a rakta dhatu dushti as a structure when it affects. So whenever there is an inflammation, and we know that, see, there is now enough meta-analysis done that one of the major markers to understand the bad prognosis in COVID-19 is if there is increase in IL-6, that is inflammatory interleukin 6. Across the world, they have seen that people who have a high interleukin 6, they succumb to their mortality.
I think there is a problem with the net connection of Dr. Somit. I think we can continue with the discussion.
Just coming back to the point where Dr. Arun has left out, we have the statistics of what is the age group of people basically getting affected. So in that, we basically see the younger population is not that affected, and the older generation is affected much more. This is where the innate immunity and adaptive immunity or acquired immunity plays a role. The innate immunity is something which we have on our own, and acquired immunity is something which we gain when we have an infection. So what happens is people who are already exposed to some kind of coronaviruses, they would, in any of the coronavirus is even common cold is caused by coronavirus. So anyone who is getting infected with COVID-19 who already had a previous coronavirus group of virus attack, what happens is they are both innate and acquired immunity will get activated. In children who are not exposed much to the diseases, what happens is only the innate immunity gets activated. So when you look at from the point of the pathogenesis, there are two reasons why some infection can become troublesome to an individual. One is the toxins produced by the organism. The other one is the response which the body gives to the toxin. Both can lead to complications. So what happens in case of acquired immunity is the response which body gives to the toxins of COVID-19 is at a higher, like it's a bit of hypersensitivity also involved. That is wherein the complications also come into play. And this is one of the reasons so far, as per the information available with us, that the age group gets much more complicated, and in pediatric population especially, it is mostly asymptomatic.
Thank you, Sujit sir. Because coming back to Dr. Arun, you have shared us some of the data. So let me ask you, how far are we in cracking the medicines for COVID-19?
Yes, Dr. Chaitanya. Actually, the latest research updates, if you look into the field of COVID-19, very high intensively, the researchers are more concentrated on the drug development and medicines for mainly to slow down the disease progression and improve the survival. Because as the death rate increases, almost all the researchers are looking to improve the survival rate. And as Dr. Somit was mentioning, as this is a viral infection, so getting into a conclude that medicines, I think it will take some time, maybe 1 year or more, as the researchers have just started. As you know, the clinical trials needs a lot of time and a lot of involvement. So the other researchers right now, which is very active, is some vaccines against the COVID-19 and the measures for prevention of the further spread, like community spread. So that kind of researches are going on. At the same time, especially from India and China, you can see there are a lot of researchers initiated using the natural medicines about the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. And there are some very interesting researches which is parallelly going on, and that is mainly related to the pregnancy and COVID-19, because there are so many females got affected who are carrying. So the researchers are showing that there is currently no evidence that the novel coronavirus can be transmitted through the placental transportation. So I think at that part we have some sort of light that we can have some hope that the is not getting transmitted from mother to child. Almost all researchers are now concentrated on the slowing up of disease and improve the survival.
And also vaccines as well.
Yes, of course, effective vaccines to resist further.
Okay. So the next time we hear about such a pandemic outbreak, what is it that we have to do? Is it taking up the immunomodulators, or is it staying back home like how we are doing now? So what is the step that we should take the next time we hear an outbreak like this? Can I have this question answered by Dr. Sujit?
Basically, it completely depends upon what is the infectious agent. What are the properties of the infectious agent? For example, in case of this Corona-19, we have three strategies. One is the lockdown, the other one is mitigation, and the third one is herd immunity. So it all depends upon what is the transmission rate. If the transmission rate is very high and the health facility to support infected individuals is low, it is always better to have a lockdown. And lockdown doesn't prevent the pandemic to get infected, but it delays. Delays in the sense the number of people getting infected will come down. And the next strategy after the lockdown will be mitigation. Mitigation in the sense wherein affected areas alone will be secluded and kept and looked into. So during the lockdown period, it will be possible for us to basically understand where exactly are the hotspots and prepare us for a mitigation. And after mitigation, and then of course the US has taken a separate stand wherein they are probably heading towards a herd immunity. So all these steps will slow down the spread of the pandemic and will give some time for the researchers to come up with some solutions. As you already know, there are so many preventions, and already the Ayurvedic Ministry of Ayush has come with a beautiful way in which how to deal with, and also we all got time for this exercise because of lockdown. And next, during mitigation, we should be able to implement the strategies which has been developed in this time, and this could actually bring down the infections and the rate. So exactly, we are in the right path. We are doing what is right now, and a pandemic like this in future, it completely depends upon what exactly how it manifests.
Is there anything to add? Understanding COVID-19. So, is there anything more to be added to this Ayu series? Coming to Dr. Somit Kumar first. Is there any more point that you would like to add to it?
Yeah, so I think we need to see that our strategy has to be three-pronged. So the first thing is in a very initial stages where the virus is just restricted to upper respiratory tract and its inflammation is more localized, we need to hit the virus hard, both by immunomodulatory herbs, which are excellent, and we will do a series on this as a part of our next online series. What are those herbs which we have to see that how can we stop the virus spreading into lower respiratory tree? So this is the first thing which we will have to see. So both attacking the virus replication. So there are a lot of promising herbs now which has been studied in previous SARS epidemic, which is of a very natural origin, which was found to be improving the replication or stopping the replication of these viruses. So can that be one of the strategy? And then in the second phase, where we have a kind of a full-blown inflammation with fever, can we, along with the existing therapy, the conventional modern therapy, can we add on and give some amount of immunomodulatory herbs? So we are talking about improving the immunity. So what we mean exactly is our innate immunity. That's what we are looking at this time. So how can we, so there are enough good preclinical studies right now done on many herbs which are specifically told in Sannidhipatika Jwara context, different permutation. As I told you, see, it will be too premature to just tell that COVID-19 is a Kapha Vataja or Vata Kaphaja, because exactly we don't know exactly the demography of the clinical data. Like how many people came with fever as main symptom and associated with dry cough, or with hemoptysis, or with diarrhea complaints. So we are not understanding. So as per Ayurveda, we have to respond to the clinical condition, what the patient presents, irrespective of all the three doshas. So what we need to do in the intermediate, moderate stage, we need to work with Sannidhipatika Jwara herbs, and you will be surprised that most of these herbs are equally very good for anti-diabetic activity. it is cardioprotective, it is nephroprotective, it is hepatoprotective. So there are a lot of right now preclinical data, and some, I was very surprised, there are also some clinical research done on in Taiwan, in where they have studied efficacy of some of this herb, even in acute respiratory distress syndrome, which we were talking about, in a ICU setup, how these herbs were taken as an add-on therapy, and they improved the acute respiratory distress. Because unfortunately today, modern medicine is talking about vaccine, but the issue is they don't have a promising drug for improving the what Sujit was talking about, hyperinflammatory response, what is called as hypercytokemia. Means all the inflammatory markers like IL-6, TNF-alpha, and NF-kappa. There's another important pathway through which we can tackle this problem. If we can reduce the hypersensitive response of this, we can come to a good palliative integrative care we are talking about in the moderate to severe cases. So I think we should be very focused that seeing the whole pathogenesis of COVID-19 and expression in terms of Ayurvedic pathogenesis. We have very strong options in how to manage this autoimmunity. And if we can properly do it with a evidence-based approach through proper scientific evidence, collaborative research, we can hit the target.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Sumit. And is there anything to add on from a microbiologist view coming to Sujit? Sir, you have 1 minute to go.
Okay. See, the point is when we have to handle this as vaccine research seems to be inconclusive. So even plasma therapy, I have serious doubt when plasma therapy is administered, it can increase the hypersensitivity. So probably plasma therapies are given along with antihistamines also. So there are so many risks with the current criteria or current strategy which the medicine has taken. This is where Ayurveda has a lot of scope. I think the future is interdisciplinary. I think there has to be an integrative treatment. As Kerala, we already see the success of that. So the path ahead should be an integrative method wherein Ayurveda and modern medicine come together and manage this situation.
Thank you, sir. And coming to you, Dr. Arun, is there anything that you would like to add to it from a research point of view, or any other kind of viewpoint to this whole discussion? 1 minute to go.
Yes, Dr. Chaitanya, I think this is the best time as the government of India, Department of Ayush is supporting very well for the researches in Ayurveda and the Ayush sectors. I think this is a very good time to come up with new ideas or come up with the actual clinical trial like integrative medicine. Collaborative works can be started as soon as possible because we are actually in the best time. And the first thing we have to start with, I think that's basically the clinical trial. And we should be able to prove the efficacy of Ayurvedic or herbal formulations or herbal formulations in this present COVID-19 condition. I think almost all the symptoms we are very familiar to treat in our clinics. We have to incorporate all those things and make use for this present condition also.
Thank you. So that was the full discussion. So let me just conclude quickly within a minute. So, so the first thing was the COVID-19. To rightly place, we have the etiology or the reason behind this COVID-19 can undoubtedly place into the unwholesome food habits and wrong routine that the humankind was going through would be the right nidanam to place. And to place it in the Ayurvedic perspective, definitely it would go to the Janabododvamsam, which has been explained by Charaka Samhita. And the virus, though called as the simplest organism, it has the capacity and it has the nature of rearranging its own genetic code, and it keeps multiplying, which gives its the which makes it more virulent. And the infectious rate of this particular COVID-19 coronavirus is more compared to all other viruses that we have seen, which makes it difficult to handle, because the rate of spread is really more compared to all the other pandemic that we have seen. So the more number of cases in shorter span, which makes it crisis to manage the whole population, which gets to into the active cases list. And apart from the three cardinal features, that is sore, fever, breathlessness and fever, the also other symptoms which we have to add on to it could be like sore throat, diarrhea, and anosmia or bruises, or even any kind of respiratory tract involvement can also be added onto the signs and symptom category of COVID-19. And as for the ratio that Dr. Arun has given us, it is one among six. One among the six will be taken into the serious category of population, or they need a serious care. And what we need right now is an interdisciplinary approach to this, and this is the right time the Ayurveda community can prove its efficiency and capacity, because all the symptoms that the COVID-19 presents is nothing different from what we actually get into the clinics. And to place it into the what has to be done the next time we hear a lockdown or a pandemic like this is definitely the lockdown, which would be the first thing. And next is the mitigation and herd immunity, and whole lot of research that is going around is definitely focusing on developing vaccines, and the measures to stop the spread is what the whole world is concerned about and is working for the to stop the spread of the pandemic. And all the age groups are vulnerable, because every group is whoever comes in contact with this droplet infection is vulnerable to this infection. But still, the people who are pre-diagnosed has a little more vulnerability when compared to the normal healthy individuals. So this was the whole conclusion of the Ayu series discussion on understanding COVID-19, the scare of the world. So we had with us Dr. Somit Kumar, the director of AVP Research Foundation, and we have Mr. Sujit Erned, the assistant director, AVP Research Foundation, and Dr. Arun, research associate, AVP Research Foundation, and myself, Dr. Chaitanya, research associate. So this is all about the series today. Stay home, stay safe, stay indoor, break the chain, and we together stand with you, and we shall overcome. Thank you.